So let's get going with those people currently following me. Maybe you already got familiar with how to use Miro, and I want to give you a brief idea of what we're going to do in this workshop. So this is our very lean and straightforward agenda. You can always find it back at the top right corner. So we're going to get started with the check-in, which we're currently in the process of. And we will do the check-in, which consists of two parts. Then I want to talk to you about product discovery and give you sort of like a short primer on product discovery, just that we all talk about the same things. Then we will talk about how to navigate product discovery, which is one of the probably the funniest parts of this workshop, which we will work together through input and practice together. And then we have a checkout and feedback section towards the end. If that sounds good to you, just give me a quick sign of life in the chat saying, yes, sounds great, can't wait, that's amazing, you're the best, Tim. Something along those lines. I'm not like, just send a pre-message to the chat. Ah, Joe, you look amazing. Thanks so much. That's awesome. Ah, I should do more of these prompts. All right. Okay, I have to start reading these, otherwise I'm blushing. All right, so what we're going to get going. Who brought snacks? I have snacks, but I won't show them to not make anybody jealous. So let's get going with the check-in, right? That's what we're going to do first. And for that, again, I'm going to take you with me. Again, everybody who just joined, please follow me on the Miro board, which is the easiest way to stay up to date with what we're going to do first. So the check-in, as I said, consisted of me saying hi, telling you a bit about Miro, and we're going to do a super quick icebreaker session with some of you already went ahead and did. So you see this gigantic map of the world, and you see plenty of pins on the left-hand side. And I just want to invite you to grab one of these pins and place it wherever you are based. And when you have placed one of these pins, you can just add a comment to the pin by either, I think, right-clicking and then add comment, or you hit the C button and then click comment and just put in the comment your name, your title, organization, location, and a fun fact about yourself. So some of you already went ahead and did that, and I'm just quickly trying to find my pin and tell you a little bit about myself. So this is me. I'm Tim. I'm based in Eastern Germany, more specifically in Erfurt, which is one of the most German names you probably pick for a town. So my name is Tim. I work as a product management coach, consultant, whatever you want to call that, working with lots of companies around the world. And the secret fact is that I only know how to cook with the help of a Thermomix. I don't know if that's an international thing, to be honest, but at least in Germany, it's a big thing. You can think of it as a cooking machine, which enables even dads like me to cook meals for the family. So yeah, just go ahead, fill out the map. I would love to see where everybody's coming from. So obviously we see plenty of people joining from the East Coast, the West Coast, from the US in general. Some people from Europe as well. Let's dig in. So we have people from the UK, from someone from Spain, from Madrid. That's great. Hi, Susanna. People from Munich. Hi, people from Munich. That's great as well. Hamburg. Awesome. I used to live in Hamburg for so long. Super popular in Australia. That's interesting. Thermomix has an international expansion plan. Interesting. All right. Let's just give everybody one more minute to place their dots. By the way, another feature, because this board is quite busy and we have quite a lot of people here, there's a way to hide all the cursors of everybody else. So if all those cursors flying around distract you, which I could totally imagine because they certainly distract me, you can hide all the cursors. So you imagine probably my pretty face on the top right corner. Right next to it, there's this arrow thingy, and you can just click on it and to hide and show all the collaborators' cursors. Judy, you can follow me by clicking on my picture. So on the top right corner, you see my picture. It's too crowded to click. Yeah, Marco, I totally agree. All right. Cool. I think there are plenty of people here. Wow. I would probably need to need some time to dive deeper into that. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. So as Lindsay also mentioned, there's an option to raise some questions. So I will have a part at the end to talk about the questions, because in between the workshop content, it will be quite hard for me to jump back and forth. So we will revisit this Q&A frame here at the top. So if you have any kind of questions which occur to you during the workshop, just revisit this frame at the top, grab one of the Post-its and place it here, like Lindsay is currently demonstrating. Thanks. All right, type a question. Cool. Now, yeah, again, please follow me all around. What I didn't tell you, I can also like force you to follow me, but I wanted you to have an intrinsic motivation to do that, so you're not surprised and being forced to follow me around. But yeah, if we're not getting across 50 people following me, then I'll probably force people and bring them to me, so we're all on the same page. Right now, 30 people are following me. Come on, a couple more people. We have 90 people on the board, 90 plus people on the board. Okay, let me just speed things up. You now have the pleasure of viewing my screen without doing it yourself. Okay, many people are following me. That's much better. So as I announced, and I just want to quickly update the agenda, obviously, we're done with the check-in. Let's talk about product discovery, and let's set a primer on product discovery and what this will be about. So for that, I want to take you in a little time travel back to 2010. Yeah, on the left-hand side, that's me. Not so pretty as my profile picture today. So this is when I started in product management. So back in 2010, I had my first job in product, stumbled upon it, into it like many people as a working student, then went through lots of different company sizes and company cultures, worked in product management. And I really thought I cracked product management when I got my certified Scrum product owner certificate back in 2012, I think, or 2013. I really thought I knew it all, right? I thought like, now I'm a product manager. I know the things. If I just write the tickets fast enough and follow the story guidings, user story guidelines strongly enough, I will be a successful product manager, which also meant that you could find me most of the time, like on the very right at my desk, writing Post-it notes, either digital or physical Post-it notes. But there was a time after that where I started to wonder, because most of how I define success for myself as a product manager was centered around things like, did we manage to get a nice even burn down chart during the sprint? Did we improve our velocity? Or was I able to craft the perfect user story template, as you can see in the middle? And did I add just enough requirements to the ticket so the engineers would build exactly what needed to be done? And most importantly, of course, was I able to ship on time to meet one of those artificial deadlines made up by my stakeholders? Then I started to wonder, hey, maybe there should be more to being a successful product manager than velocity, story quality, and meeting deadlines. And that's when I learned about product discovery, right? You probably know this bald-headed guy, Marty Kagan, one of the OGs of product, or the OG in product, who coined the term product discovery, I think in 2017 and 2007, sorry. And I think he made it clear that he really wanted to make it clear that there's something beyond the phase where you just spec out solutions and don't treat it as a sequential order of predictable activities, and start to call this one product discovery. So I thought, like, great, product discovery really sounds like a good thing, and it could be this missing puzzle piece I was missing from my work in product. So then, skipping ahead, in reality, I still found myself mainly ticking off tasks simply to confirm existing ideas. But I thought those are product discovery tasks, so I must be doing product discovery. And I also mostly followed exact step-by-step orders of how activities should be aligned, and still was in this rhythm of following sequential orders of activities, which I thought would be called product discovery. And I even then primarily debated things based on opinions instead of actual collected evidence. So that was the world I found myself in, and still thought like, is this product discovery thing? It doesn't differ that much from what I did before that. And so after time, so skipping ahead like 5 to 6 years, to be honest, after working in various industries in B2C and B2B, working as a coach, as an in-house product manager, and as a product consultant, I really found myself in a situation where many product teams struggled with the same things, right? You try to stick to specific frameworks of how discovery should be done, and to find the one master plan to do discovery successful. And basically, today when I talk to teams and introduce them to product discovery, I basically tell them it's not that much about the frameworks you use. It's more about like, do you have the right intent about product discovery? And I personally boil down the core intent of discovery in a way that it's about answering two questions. And it's about answering them in this order most often. First, it's about finding out if this is a problem worth solving. And if you've understood that, you can take care of answering the second question, which is about, is this actually a solution worth pursuing? Right? The problem, the solution. Sounds easy, but it's not. But that's still, that again, that's the core intent. So today I want to shy away from specific frameworks and like hard to follow exact guidance what discovery is, and really want to boil things down to this problem space and this solution space. And when I want to like make discovery even more tangible to teams, I break it down to those 6 loosely connected phases, right? Those 6 phases you see on the outside of this hexagon. And it's not so much about following this exact order on the outside, as you could see, but you can also you should be able to take shortcuts using those gray dotted lines in between of them, acknowledging that discovery is not by no means a linear activity, right? So most importantly, the alignment in the research part of discovery. This is what's dealing with the problem space. And then once you have more clarity on that, you can focus on the ideation, creation, validation, and refinement, which is all about the solution space. So those are the big areas of discovery. And today I want to make that more tangible to you and give you some guidance of how you could navigate through these phases. But before we talk about the phases in more detail, I just want to give you the high-level pitch for every phase. And then I want to understand how you are currently working by doing a quick survey. So the alignment phase really is about aligning around the problem space with the team, your stakeholders, meaning you want to have enough clarity around what triggered this product discovery, what makes it something worth looking into, how is it connected to our strategic priority, and how does success look like ultimately, not in the form of solutions, but in the form of changed user or business results. The research phase speaks for itself. It's about uncovering an actual problem using qualitative, quantitative techniques. Ideation is more than just sticking ideas to the wall, but doing it in a more structured way, to having a structured conversation around how you could solve identified and proven problems. Creation and validation are about creating prototypes and validating them through a set of experiments, ideally from as many angles as possible, to ensure that people want to use a solution, can use a solution, and that you can build it. And last but not least, it's about the refinement phase where you have to transition validated ideas into a prioritized backlog. So those are the 6 high-level phases of discovery. And again, it's not about following a step-by-step playbook here and making it a linear process, but just feeling confident with jumping in between those phases. So the next thing I want to do, as I said, I want to hear from you, like independent of what kind of regard, what kind of situation you work, I would love to hear from you where you spend most of your time, right? So for that, and bear with me before you get going, I want to use the built-in voting feature here in Miro. We're going to do a dot voting on those 6 post-it notes here. So if I bring everybody back to me again, we have those 6 post-it notes representing all of the high-level categories of the product discovery. And I just want to hear where you spend most of your time and most of your energy and attention is spent. So for that, I will kickstart a dot voting session in a couple of seconds, which means that you will then be able to add a vote on any of the 6 post-it notes. You can place multiple votes on the same post-it note if you really want to emphasize a specific thing. And you have 3 votes to spare per person, right? You can't spend more than 3 votes, okay? So let's do this voting. And this is oftentimes a very surprising result. So I'm going to head and start the voting session now. It's 2 minutes long. And you should now be able to cast votes on the post-it notes. Could you please confirm in the chat that you're able to add the votes to the hexagon? I see some people nodding. Okay, cool. Thanks, folks. Okay, I voted. Yeah, we should have added like a sticker or something like I voted, like a badge. This gives people a little bit more time. Now, I'm not sure if everybody will be able to see the vote, so I will just I will also take a screenshot of the result and add it to the Miro board. The main goal of this exercise is, by the way, that it's it's really just a great representation of how your company culture is set up, the skills and resources you have at your company, the way which things are prioritized in your company, that you can really see where people spend most of their time. Typically, most teams I start working with are very much focused on the refinement phase or the validation phase, and very little attention and time and energy is spent on the alignment and research phase, which is obviously something I try to change to a certain extent, because I believe all that energy invested in a solution is not really worth it if it's aimed at the wrong problem. So we have 15 seconds left to finish the vote, and then we take a look at the results where people are spending their time. Okay, 2, 1, and we're done. Seeing the results. Let's see how the calculation works. Sometimes it's a bit funky for me. I never did a dot vote with that many people. So let's see how long the calculation. Oh yeah, there we go. Can you see the? No, you can't see it, right? Let me take a screenshot.
Tim, I'm sharing it on our screen, on the screen share as well.
Ah, that's great. Okay, cool. I will just add it in here for documentation purposes, obviously. So the results are in, and it is it's fairly balanced, to be honest, which is nice. So we have 45. Okay, more people than I thought on the problem space, alignment and research, ideation, creation. It's even declining towards the end, which is interesting. Which means that people are might be struggling a bit with putting things into action. That's interesting. It's an interesting topic we'll talk about later. So yeah, that's a great overview. Okay. From that, I of course have to update our agenda to make sure that we know that we finished the primary product discovery, and we'll now talk about how to navigate this funky, nonlinear kind of process we all seem to rate as important, but have a hard time mastering. Okay, so what I will do, I will add another layer here to help you with the structuring process. So remember what I told you about the problem space, the solution space, and the phases and activities which are related to that. Now, what I want to add to you, simply because it's a more tangible approach to structuring the activities, is something has been moved because I probably didn't lock it properly. Okay, so what I want to introduce is a framework called impact mapping. Now, how do I add another framework to the discussion? Honestly, it's quite easy, because what I told you about those various discovery phases and the potential ways you could, the potential activities you could follow throughout these phases, oftentimes teams have a problem connecting these to each other, right? It's difficult to connect the different insights and requirements you're collecting along the way and form a coherent picture, which allows you to make decision and prioritization. So for that, we're going to use impact mapping. So impact mapping has been around for a couple of years now. It has been coined, I think, back in 2012 from a guy called Gojko Acic. I've personally been exposed to it in 2014, started working with it, and over time developed my own version of it, right? So full acknowledgement to Gojko, but this is my interpretation of the framework. And then we will talk more about the individual levels and what's behind that and how that's connected to product discovery in a second. I just wanted to prime you for the framework already. That's what we'll use as like a template, basically, to talk about potential discovery activities and potential challenges here. And you can also see, if we compare impact mapping to the differentiation of the problem space and the solution space, what I talked about, especially the upper part, so everything until impact to outcome is centered around the problem space, and the bottom is at the solution space. So it perfectly supports this notion that we want to understand the problem space first before we start talking about solution details and run experiments. That's the beauty of impact mapping. Okay, now before we move to the next chapter, everybody still with me? Again, I would love to see a quick sign of life in the chat. Awesome. That's good. Cool. Then we're going to move on. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about every level of the impact map, level by level. And the way we do that will be quite similar every time. So I will tell you about the intent of this level. I tell you a couple of background content, what this level is important. Then I'll give you a couple of examples. And then I want to invite you to get active yourself and to hear from you what of potential artifacts you would see on that map for your own example, for your business, for your company maybe. And we're going to talk about where people could get, like what are resources to fill those levels, right? So we're going to talk about specific examples, and we're going to talk about what you can do when you return back to work, specific measures, sources, formats to fill these levels yourself and to put them together, right? So we're going to start on the impact level, as you can see. And so the impact level is also oftentimes called the why level. And the goal here is to really give enough clarity to the teams around why you are doing something, why you're on a specific product discovery mission, for example. Shoot, it seems that the locking didn't work. And whoever just did that, please press Command Z. That would be great. And I don't know why I thought I locked everything. Okay. Weird. Shouldn't happen again. Everything else seems to be locked. Okay. So it's about answering the why, right? You want to understand, like, why are you doing something in particular? So this is specifically, about a company level impact, right? So that's the important thing. It's about a company level goal. The impact typically represents like a specific state of health for your company and like how a measurable progress looks like for any of these strategic directions you want to work at. For example, typically these come from the bucket of activity, growth, customer satisfaction, monetization, process excellence. Anything around these buckets is typically at the core of your product strategy. And depending on how granular you want to scope this map, you want to express specific metric, could be NPS, could be user registration, could be cash. You want to put that at the top. The twist here is that typically these metrics cannot be changed it cannot be changed through one solution alone, but the multiple solutions and efforts have to come together. So it's hard for us to tie individual solutions to those metrics, which where the other levels come into play. So some examples could be NPS is not a metric. It is a metric. It's not a good metric. Okay, let me put that out there. So examples could be, we want to grow 10% market share in Brazil. We want to increase the user conversion by 20%, increase the number of weekly active users by a specific amount until the end of next year. So it's about those high-level company priority metrics, right? Which give you the overarching why behind why you want to look closer into problem space. Now, I want to invite you to the impact map examples. So there's a frame next to that with plenty of Post-it notes on there. And I would love to hear from you. What kind of examples you think would work from your own company or made up examples? What are specific impact examples expressing a strategic priority in your company, which could go at the top of an impact map? You just grab a Post-it note and start typing. If you run out of Post-it notes, the good thing is it's easy to get new ones in. Of course, someone is writing NPS now. I should do that as an A/B test without talking about NPS and seeing how often it comes up. 50 new clients by end of the year. Product offering to 3 additional states. Yeah. Increase in sales, increased trial to subscription conversion, transition from service-based company to SaaS. This one is interesting at the top left. I would love to hear the metric to that. So I would say transition from service-based company to SaaS. That's a nice statement. How would you measure that? How would you measure the progress towards that goal? Doctor televisits increased by 10%. That makes sense. Free membership plan converted to paid membership. So yeah, if you're talking on the top right, if you're talking about a conversion rate, I agree with you. The way it's written right now, it reads like a task, where I would agree this is not something which should go at the top level of an impact map. Transition internal tool to external facing tool. Again, put a number on it. How would you measure success? How does success look like? Lots of companies have a problem with that. I agree with that, or that it's difficult to articulate that. And really, the simple question is, ask a boss or a C-level, whoever that is, how does success look like for the company at the end of the year, expressed through a number? Gets the conversation going. A hard conversation, but it gives you so much more clarity for the following actions. Increase in inspection booking, increase in sales, reduction support calls. Okay, so I think the majority of people are running in the same direction. Another great source where you could get those things from. I mentioned the product strategy already. And the other one is, for example, if you work with OKRs, objectives and key results, typically if you have company level OKRs, which I oftentimes recommend, not just team level, typically the key results from the company level OKR can be a great impact on their own, right? Because they ideally, right, they express a specific strategic priority shifted towards a certain degree. I know in most cases, those key results only express features. In that case, it doesn't work. Okay, let's move on to the right. We now talked about examples, and I now gave you a couple of examples as well of where to get the impact from. And I would love to hear from you what could you do to get clarity on the impact in your company? What kind of artifacts, meetings, resources could give you clarity around an impact that matters for your company? Again, remember, we're talking about company level expressions of a strategic priority. Where would you get these from? You're tasked to do an impact map. What would you do to get started with the why level, with the impact? Stock market. Yeah, that's an interesting one. It's more about those broader strategic perspective. Discovery workshop, sensing sessions with SMEs closest to problem. Watch session cam recordings. So again, I just want to re-emphasize, it's typically, if you use the impact map on this level, it's about the company level expression of company level strategic priorities. Some of you are already going a little bit more tactical by looking at session recordings in particular. It's probably something at this point in time, it should be expressed through existing materials. Hippo, yeah, that's unfortunately true. Company OKRs, I gave you that already. Top line revenue, that makes sense. Looking at business KPIs and results. Number of demo inquiries, that's more of an example for an impact metric, right? Revisit contract clauses, this is an interesting one. This could make sense. If you have like a self-serve, like an on-premise thing, EBITDA, product vision canvas, yeah, this one could also be interesting on a company level. Product vision doc, company annual report, this is great as well. Reach for forums, again, I wouldn't say for this metric, you shouldn't come too much from the nitty-gritty user perspective. You should rather look at the strategic priorities expressed from the company. Again, of course, if these are insufficient, you need to talk more to your users, right? Well, I just locked this frame. How is it possible that it got moved? Huh. Okay, let's move on for now. We talked about that. So these are some sources. Some of you are really on the right track already. What you could do. Another format which I want to share with you, which you can use later on, which is an image. So I wanted to upload the PDF. But it's a framework called the mission briefing, which I oftentimes use to create this kind of clarity with teams and companies. And this is like a one-pager, one of those one-pager frameworks. And the beauty of it is that it helps you, that it forces you to talk about what's currently, what's the big problem with the status quo you're facing? What do you want to achieve as a company? How does it fit into the company strategy? So it primes you to answer. And I'm just gonna try to find the PDF in parallel. Sorry. So it's basically an exercise you can conduct. It's basically like a guide for a conversation you would want to have with your managers, with the team, to really articulate priorities on this company level and make sure that you know the overarching direction a product discovery should go. So here we go with the PDF. Should be able to click through the PDF as well if you want to take a closer look. Okay, so again, that's one way to structure the conversation here, right? Using like a mission briefing, there are other one-pagers, but this one could be a good starting point. All right, let's move on to the second level. Again, I'm going to take most of you with me for a second. So we're now talking about the actor level, right? The actor level of the impact map. And the actor level basically is a different way of slicing your users, your user segments. Now, the interesting thing here is that most people would say like, oh, Tim, we know our customer segments, it's super clear. The interesting thing is that, first of all, not that many companies do additional segmentation beyond new users and returning users or free and paid users. And more specifically, I think it's important to have a specific segmentation of your users to depending on the goal you're trying to achieve, right? It should be you're probably looking at your users from a different lens, whether you're trying to drive monetization or growth or anything like that. So the actors level, which is also aiming at answering the question of who do you want to solve a problem for, basically, or who can help you achieve this overarching impact, are those people who can help you to do that. And this can be direct customers, so end users or customers, probably worth differentiating B2B. But it can be internal supporting departments, right? So for example, the marketing department, it can be your marketing department, because this is a group of people who have a problem which prevent you from achieving the goal. It also can be the IT department of your customers, because they have a problem you need to face, right? Something in B2B. Maybe you also want to differentiate between new users, returning users, something along those lines. So this is important, and this is quite interesting, because many companies struggle in that regard. For example, the more complex your business model is, let's say you're B2B to C or something, this will get more interesting. But this is why it's so important to segment the customers based on the goal you have, and not just using the default segmentation. So that's the idea here again. And I would love to hear a couple of examples. Like, what are potential actor groups and actor segments in your company? Like, how do you differentiate users? What kind of potential actor groups? Budget holder. That's interesting. InfoSec team. Well, I have to Google what InfoSec is. Huh. Customer support, project leads, lab scientist, owner of Squirrels. Wow, I would love to hear the product story about that, behind that. Owner of Squirrels. Players with 0 to 20 fines. Yeah, that's interesting. Gaming, fitness retail store customers, healthcare professionals. The interesting challenge here is to, as I said, so the key question you're trying to answer is, who has a problem which prevents me from achieving my goal? Fairly straightforward. And then, of course, you want to make sure that those segments have enough differences that it makes sense to look at their needs from a different perspective, right? And not just trying to solve a problem for the average, but you're trying to solve a problem for a specific group of users, which makes it easier for you to measure success and ultimately drive the business results. Free trial users, premium subscribers. Okay, I think everybody got the idea here. Now, the interesting question is, of course, as we move on to the right-hand side, where would you get this actor segmentation from, right? So what could you do? What would you do to segment the users, the actors around a specific goal? What could you do? Specific measures. What are sources which would help you with this kind of segmentation? Okay, somebody already uncovered my hidden resource on the top right. But yeah, full story. Qualitative research, that's true. Data team, yeah, absolutely. Behavior data, persona development, field studies, legislation. I'm wondering if somebody will bring up the one source I'm always asking for first. Competitive analysis, yeah, that makes sense. I'm seeing personas a lot. Yeah, I think personas go in the right direction. So I believe, giving you a quick spoiler, I think one of the, from a highest level, I think the main input for how to segment your users should come from your product strategy, right? Because ideally your product strategy should express who you're planning, how you're planning to win in the market you have chosen, right? And the market you've chosen should be described by the customer segments or user segments. So this would be important to have. Normally it would be a requirement. And this is one of the sources I'm recommending here on the right-hand side, which is the product field, which is from my perspective, a great product strategy framework. I think it's great because it encapsulates those perspectives of users versus customers and all those other stuff. So using the product field to express your product strategy from a higher level, I think would be a great source as well to get started with those customer segment and those actor groups you're trying to work on. Okay, that's it for the actors. Now we get to the, honestly, the most difficult part, or at least the part most teams are struggling with, which is the outcomes, okay? And I'm going to take you with me and talk a little bit about outcomes. So you probably heard about this mythical term, like what's an outcome? Everybody tries to do that. It's hard to do that in practice. Again, I'm going to use my definition here, which is informed by many other smart people. And we're going to try to see how that translates into action. So the outcome here, you see the outcomes are associated with an actor, right? And the main question you're trying to answer, which is the how question, is how do I have to change the behavior of the actors in order to achieve my goal? How do I have to change the behavior of the actors to achieve my goal in the form of the impact? How do I have to do that? So this is something where you would really list like how the behavior has to change, right? It's not about putting in problems. It's about putting in how the behavior has to change. The most important twist here is outcomes are not product features. Teams get so tempted to start listing solutions on this level. It's not what this is about. It's about outcomes and changes in behavior. Remember, we're still in the problem space. We're not talking about solutions yet. It's also important to show like how the activity is different from what's currently possible, right? So you don't just want to say, well, people should be able to invite friends. So instead saying selling friends. No, you shouldn't be able to sell friends, invite friends 5 times faster, something those lines. Other examples, purchasing tickets without calling the call center, responding to customer requests from within Slack, right? You want to clearly make sure how this should differ from the status quo. The last pro tip I want to give you is you should be able to re-articulate an outcome as an how might we statement, right? So we know all these how might we statements from the ideation sessions. You should be able to articulate it as a how might we statement to say, how might we enable the actor to create outcome? Or how might we create outcome for the actor? Something along those lines. If you can't put it in this template, chances are high that you're already talking about a solution because nobody gets excited about how might we build a dashboard, right? So again, I'd love to hear from you. What are outcome examples you can think of for your own product or other products you would like to build? Tell me about outcome examples. Receiving bespoke heart health support without putting the, yeah, that's a very specific outcome like that. Improve self-serve and in turn reduce CTS. Okay, there's lots of lingo, but I think it makes sense. Access insurance quotes while buying a car. That's true. I would love to hear like what's the difference? Like access insurance quotes while buying a car without a computer, without a salesperson, which could be the interesting twist here. Fully automated research labs. That sounds like a solution, to be honest, not like a change in behavior. How might we create fully automated research labs for actors? Not sure. Maybe there's some specific domain knowledge I'm not knowing. Reduce time to troubleshoot IT incidents. Again, sounds more like a metric, not specifically like a change in behavior. Use new tool and stop using old tools so it can be deprecated. Yeah, I think you could probably cut that into 2 outcomes. I think it's a bit much for 1 outcome. Get products on time. Yeah, how might we deliver training remotely? Well, that's a broad one, but probably would do the job. Improve and streamline documentation practices. This sounds like a task to me. Not sure if it's an actual outcome. Improving signing for a loan from a push notification. That's definitely a solution. The change in behavior you want to do is approve a loan without specific restriction you're currently facing. Push notification is already a solution, at least to me. Maybe there's more context to your solution. Digitizing payment flows. Again, this is also sounds a bit outputty or solution-ish already. Single place for managing the media and cellular bills. Yeah, that makes more sense. Okay, now we have that on the plate. A couple of outcome examples. You probably get the idea and the difference. And now, of course, the big question is, how would you uncover those outcomes? What are sources for the outcome, for getting to an outcome? What could you do to arrive at validated outcomes? I already see the $1 million answer in the middle, qualitative research. This is certainly a winner. Journey mapping, design thinking process. That's true. Design sprint. Even though I would love to disagree with the design sprint, because personally, I always see the design sprint a bit more in the solution space already and not dealing that much with the problem, which is worth solving. Empathy mapping, interviews with community team, ecosystem mapping. Yeah, I think all of these go in the right direction. For those of you who are still typing, let me give you some additional examples. Oh, no, somebody like this. Obviously, so research is one of the key answers here, right? So you might have some existing data already at hand, but specifically looking at the categories of behavioral, qualitative, and quantitative research and attitudinal research. Those are the things you probably need to act on in order to understand the problems your customers have, turn them into outcomes. That's the big thing. That's the big gap here. Now, using an outcome is great for two things. So remember when I told you in the beginning that if you only have the impact at the very top, it can be difficult to measure the exact contribution of an individual feature at the bottom. And the beauty of the outcome in the middle is that it serves as some kind of proxy, right? Because the outcome helps you to determine the specific success of an individual feature, measure success for an individual feature, and thereby you're certain that it contributes to the right direction. So mapping those outcomes to the actors ensures you, and with the impact at the top, helps you to stay on track with like, hey, we're actually contributing to the right priority, we're running in the right direction, we're not solving problems which are not really related to this overarching goal. Could someone please put back the diagram from the end of the actors section? Oh, somebody stole that. No, it's not. There it is. There you go, James. It's back again. Okay, so that's the outcome. Let's move on to the outputs. Now it's the more fun part, because most teams are suddenly like eagerly awaiting the moment where they could tell me about all their fancy, great ideas. Now that we have hopefully managed to work through the problem space and haven't skipped the problem space, we clearly know what we want to achieve. Now we can talk about what we want to do to achieve our goal, right? So moving to the right, this is the what level, meaning what will we build to create the change in behavior we set out to achieve. Honestly, it's one of the least important levels because it's fairly easy to come up with ideas. Use it as an ongoing canvas you will fill instead of trying to fill it like at once. Treat features as options. Don't treat it as granted that everything will be built just because it's listed there, and only focus on high-level deliverables. And those deliverables could be online ticket sales page, a mobile homepage with a purchase form, a Slack integration, a CRM, iOS app, all those things, right? If we remember what I told you about the outcome, that you should be able to rephrase it as a how might we statement, this is why you do that, because then you can now frame a structured ideation session during a discovery in the right way by giving people enough context for what kind of change in behavior you're trying to create for which user segment to achieve which overarching goal. And now people can go crazy with the ideas, right? For every ideation session, I would recommend to only focus on one outcome at a time, to be honest, because this can be demanding enough for most people. So this is the output level. Again, you want to make sure these are in line with the outcomes. And now I would love to hear from you. What are outputs you are working on, outputs you would love to build, and outputs you are seeing other companies do? What is an output to you? iOS widget, recurring automatic payments, online self-paced course, owner dashboard. That's true. Top secret, of course. Native app. I think native app would be a little bit too high level. Maybe you could be more specific. Self-service chatbot, mobile. Mobile shipping container, redesign WYSIWYG editor. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, you got the idea. Now, again, the big question is, how could you arrive at these outputs? Like, what are sources for you to get inspired and get input and get inspiration for outputs for the specific solutions you will build? Again, not for the sake of building a feature. You want to build things to drive change in behavior, to contribute to business priorities. Workshops, of course, workshop is always the answer. Prototype testing, I'm not sure if prototype testing will give you inspiration for a solution. Not sure. Co-creation, competitive research, obviously, competitor analysis, ideation workshop, IDEO 100. Yeah, okay. I see you guys are on the right track. So it's all about the structured approach, right? So personally, I'm not the biggest fan of like an idea backlog and just revisit old ideas. Instead, I rather encourage people to act on the new insights they have discovered, frame it as a challenge, and then do the structured idea generation throughout the discovery and do it on time and not just revisit old ideas. Okay, we're nearly at the end. And we're going to look at the lowest level of the impact map. So remember what I told you about that you shouldn't take the outputs for granted. Just because they are listed on the impact map doesn't mean they are naturally going to magically be built, just as you don't have to focus on all the streams of the impact map at the same time. You want to make sure you validate your ideas. So this is the question which aims to answer at the level which aims to answer the question whether this is a solution worth pursuing. You maybe remember this core question from earlier during the discovery introduction. So you want to make sure that you run experiments around chosen ideas that look at the aspect of desirability, feasibility, and usability of every idea. Examples: fake door testing, Wizard of Oz MVP, Spike implementation, prototype usability interviews, all these things, all the experiments you could think of basically. So again, the last time for this part, I would love to hear what kind of experiments you like to run for the outputs you have in your company if you validate things. Judging on the vote from earlier, plenty of you are engaged in the validation phase of discovery. So I would love to hear how you test things. A/B testing, of course. This is probably either from people who don't check validity or who work in high traffic B2C environments, because I always see this frustration with B2B companies who are like, yeah, 7 customers, not a great place to be in for A/B testing. Rapid prototyping with InVision. Beta launch is a great one. Design sprints, yeah. You can probably, basically the validation part of a design sprint is the interviews at the very end, right? So it's about the prototyping, prototype testing, usability testing, fake door testing, provide at least some value. That's true, whoever wrote that. Usability testing scripts, surveys, review mockups with users, Figma. Yeah, cool. You're on the right track. Cool. User testing a mirror prototype. That would be interesting to see. Okay, so now that you know, like, what would be examples for the weather level? Of course, I would love to hear, like, how do you come up with those validation methods and techniques? Like, what do you do to validate solutions? How do you have a conversation about validating an idea in your company as a team? User scenarios, get out of the building. I'm usually asked, hey, what should we do? That's a great role to be in, whoever wrote that you are asked like, hey, what should we do? It's requested by the product owner, lo-fi wireframes, customer journey map. One thing which I just revealed on the right-hand side is more like a series of prompts I oftentimes use to get teams engaged in the validation phase, which is to think of those various aspects, right? So what are the assumptions behind the solution? What are the assumptions behind the solution you want to validate? What are, again, trying to remember what are the outcomes you're trying to achieve, who should inform the kind of experiment design you're running. Make sure to look at these aspects as well and answer these questions for yourself, basically, to arrive at a set of experiments you want to make sure. After design is completed, I'm usually asked, okay, probe for uncertainties. Yeah, that makes lots of sense. All right. Cool. So that was the obviously the very quick walkthrough for product discovery, like product discovery in a time capsule and nutshell, probably. Hopefully the impact map gave you some kind of idea for how you can structure your product discovery. Before we wrap things up, I want to do two things. On the one hand, I will want to briefly look at the Q&A part, which I've seen some couple of questions have been in there. This is awesome. We share the recording later. I think we will do, right, Lindsay? I think the recording will be shared.
Yes, we will be sharing recordings as well as the board, so you can use this awesome work yourself.
This answers the second question as well. I'm interested in creating some templates for design exercises. Hold my hand, please. Sorry, can't do that. Have to disappoint you. Can't hold your hand. Why does the weather content appear at the end of your presentation? I imagine this is part of early ideation, concept validation. It's at the end. For me, it is at the end of defining whether you want to build a specific solution. And as I mentioned, I think there's lots of work which needs to be done around the problem space first, which means that I think it's more important to align on the core business impact, the actors, the problems of the actors, then talk about solutions, and then you validate a specific solution. The question whether you're looking in this problem space in general, of course, this should be answered at a higher level, which is where the impact is for, and other tools like OKRs or mission briefing are for. But the specifics of whether you actually should build a solution naturally should happen at the end, because you should only talk about solutions towards the end. I hope that makes sense. Participant 6. Any other, maybe just 1 or 2 minutes before we wrap up the full workshop? People starting to write something, but I'm not sure.
Last call for questions. Oh, here's one more.
You're not the only one, Henry. Sorry, I think why is asking for help with templates met with a comment about holding someone's hand? Because you read, hold my hand, please. And then I said, sorry, I can't hold your hand. It wasn't meant to be rude. It was just like, I can't do it.
A couple new questions on the board. What templates do you use in Miro for the product discovery process? Tim, are there any specific Miro templates that you'd recommend?
I mean, obviously there's the impact mapping template, which is also published in the Miroverse gallery. You can use that. There's also an ideation template I published in the Miroverse as well. And then really I use more like this discovery structure as the discovery structure I shared earlier, like the hexagon as the rough outline for me, how I structure it. And then I rather like assemble what I need, right? Depending on whether it's what qualitative research, is it quantitative research, what kind of ideation do we do, what kind of experiments do we run? That's really the main differentiation here. I don't have any specifics to hold back to. Why output level is least important? That's an oversimplification, but obviously I think it's much more important to have clarity around the problem than the solution, and which is where I think it's, if you like, you can probably imagine that everybody has so many ideas all the time, and it's easy to talk about ideas all the time, which why I think it's one of the least important levels, because they require less effort. Obviously, in terms of coming up with ideas, it's not hard to focusing on this. Obviously, you have to nail the quality of the solution, but coming up with ideas is typically not the hard part. Is it possible and correct to fill experiment levels without filling outputs? Then I would ask you what you would seeking to experiment around. So I think you should have some kind of core hypothesis or solution in mind in order to decide which experiments you need to run, right? For some ideas, an A/B test might not be working well, or qualitative validation might not be working well. So I think this highly depends. Is it possible to go through the overlap of this framework with design thinking framework? Sorry, I'm not familiar with the design thinking framework. I know lots of bits from design thinking, but not the one framework. So I can't do this like overlap. I wrote an article on how design sprints and discovery play together. Don't know if I can put it in my blog. This one will give you an idea. Maybe just 2 more questions. And then how do you recommend documenting, synthesizing communication, all the work that is done during discovery. So my core philosophy is to have one like main board room where I synthesize all the insights I have, like the mission briefing and all those details. And then I have breakout rooms where I do the actual work, where I document the interview, where you document these are ideation sessions where you document business requirements and anything in that regard. I think that makes sense. Any advice on how to keep non-semi-digital experiments low cost? No, unfortunately I don't. I think it's just this like old saying of getting out there and trying to talk to people, even though I have a bit of a problem with this like random approaching people in a random way and ask them what their opinion, because as we learned, it's important for whom you're trying to solve a problem. So proper segmentation and recruiting for research and validation is important. So I think probably the easiest one would be to dig into, even says non-semi-digital online communities, and getting to segment people there. So I think that would make sense. So I want to just skip ahead to the very end for those people who are still there. So I would love to hear two things, or like leave you with two things. So on the one hand, if you want to learn more about product discovery, I recently compiled all my discovery work I did on a hub, on a product discovery hub. You can revisit that and basically get lots of stuff and insights on the other things I'm doing. And besides that, I'm always love to connect with people. So if you're interested to hear about what else I'm doing, you can connect on LinkedIn. Should be easy to do. And again, of course, I would love to hear a bit of workshop feedback at the bottom. So some quick and dirty dot voting here. If you just could rate the workshop based on 3 aspects: how practical the materials were, how did you find the facilitation, and if you would implement any of the stuff we discussed. I would love to hear these things. And then, just leave a dot. Again, connect with me. Would love to hear from you. I hope you enjoyed that. Obviously, can't emphasize that enough. That's a very compressed and condensed version, but that's the goal of these workshops, right? So I hope you got a lot out of it. I certainly enjoyed the session, and enjoy the rest of Distributed.